Good morning. Welcome to the premium video forecast discussion for July 6, 2020. Of course, I'm your meteorologist, Stephen DiMartino. This morning, we discussed in the long-range thoughts all about the MJO guidance, which right now is pretty much supporting the pattern we're currently in, which is basically hot, humid, and active. Well, for the most part, humid and active. I think the best word really is tropical, okay? Because what you have here is this continuation of a clash between the maritime air masses and the tropical air masses coming in from the Gulf Coast. And we discussed that this is going to be a theme all the way back in May, and it looks like that is unfolding as expected. Now, the MJO does go into a neutral phase in the operational guidance, okay, and in the control guidance, but in a lot of the other members in the ensemble guidance is suggesting a phase 3 and 4. So I like the idea of a very weak phase 3, 4 to neutral type of environment in terms of tropical forcing. And what that should tell us as we head towards August is that we should start to see more and more of an influence from the developing La Nina, which we'll check out tomorrow. So what this would suggest is that overall, the subtropical jet stream is going to weaken, and that's going to support the decrease in vertical wind shear, which means that we're going to see an increased potential in tropical development in the Atlantic Ocean. And also, it would suggest an increase in 500 millibar heights overall. Now, this is where things get tricky. You see, what we have right now developing is a very powerful heat ridge. Let's look at this over the 10-day period as it starts to form over the desert southwest and it expands throughout the Rockies and then pushes into the plains. And what this ridge signifies is very hot, dry air that feeds back on itself. So what happens is that, okay, it gets hot and the atmosphere expands at the lower levels, which expands 500 millibar heights, which in return allows for more heating. So it's a feedback effect. And so what you end up with is a very powerful ridge over the plains and over the Mississippi River Valley. And that feedback is seen very clearly here in the 850 millibar temperatures. This is pretty impressive heat. So what happens is that when you get this feedback set up, it doesn't break down very easily. Meanwhile, you have your Western Atlantic Ridge building because the MJO phases would support it. Okay, you're moving into phase 3 and 4 after being in phase 2. So there has to be a weakness in between these two powerful ridges. And that's where we are, right here. Now, my summer forecast would suggest that this trough is a little bit further west, back towards the Tennessee River Valley. And there are some suggestions of that being the case as we look at the ensemble guidance. Okay, you see a little bit more of a push back to the west here. But whether it's here or here, either one supports a moisture channel from the Gulf Coast and from the Caribbean right up into our neck of the woods. And it also supports below normal heights, or at least near normal to slightly below normal heights, around the Canadian Maritime. So this all sets up the pattern we continue to see and will likely continue to see as we move in through July and into early August. Now, does that mean it's going to stay cool? No. Now, there's a reason why I said hot, humid, and active. Where you are in the Delaware River Valley or eastern Pennsylvania, you're going to continue to see temperatures bouncing anywhere between the upper 80s and mid 90s. If you start to see forecasts in the upper 90s to lower 100s, I'll take that with a grain of salt because there is a lot of moisture and a lot of convection in the atmosphere, which can easily knock down those temperatures and keep you more in the mid 90s, especially with cloud cover around. Also means there's going to be plenty of fog. And there's going to be a very impressive thermal gradient because of a sea breeze front that's going to continue to be a theme, especially along the Jersey Shore and around Long Island. This is a pattern that would support very impressive heat as you move towards the Ohio River Valley, Tennessee River Valley, the upper Midwest, and the plains. For the northern mid-Atlantic, we'll get our surges of heat. We'll get our days where we get into the mid to upper 90s. Don't get me wrong. But they'll be far fewer than what you would see for the West. And I am rather concerned about this weakness in the channel here, funneling up any type of tropical disturbance that tries to form around here and send it right up the coast. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that because that is going to be an issue. Meanwhile, tropical development, well, we have Eduardo, kind of. It was named a tropical storm last night at 40-mile-per-hour winds, and pretty much the winds are all right here. The center's here, and all your strong convection and winds are up here, and it's moving off into the northwestern Atlantic at around 33 to 35 miles per hour. By the time we get to this evening, this will be a non-tropical or extratropical low-pressure system and will no longer be a threat for anybody. And it really won't have much of an influence on the 500 millibar pattern either, as it is pretty much too weak. So overall, that is going to skedaddle and get out of our neck of the woods. Closer to home, here is our trough and weakness hanging around the region once again, and plenty of moisture in the atmosphere for lifting is in place. And this is actually going to be the lowest we're going to see the precipitable water values over the next couple of days. We're going to range anywhere from 1 to 2 inches. Wind shear, not that impressive, which means any thunderstorm that develops is going to be slow moving, and that means there's a potential here for some very heavy downpours. And of course, we're going to have to watch out for the potential for some cooling in the atmosphere because we have mid-level temperature, mid-level lapse rate is pretty impressive. So any of that moisture lifting up into the mid-levels of the atmosphere within a thunderstorm is going to rapidly cool and sink, and that's where we could get our severe thunderstorm with wind gusts over 60 miles per hour as that downburst wind gust becomes an issue. Taking a look at the radar right now, it's pretty quiet, but you can see some hints, something trying to brew here. Little mischief. And when we take a look at our water vapor satellite picture, here's our trough that's going to linger over New England. 500 millibar heights will steadily rise over the next couple of days, which means that our short waves are going to be weaker, which means that the thunderstorm development will all have to depend on boundary interaction or frontogenesis. Okay, so sea breeze fronts, old outflow boundaries, stuff like that. Temperatures are going to be close enough to the convective temperature to allow for thunderstorms to develop in the afternoon. And then once you get that trigger, it's kind of a zipper and everything kind of opens up. Meanwhile, keep an eye on this disturbance here and this little tropical disturbance. You can barely see it. If you go on the radar down towards Tampa Bay, you'll see this little swirl. And the National Hurricane Center is keeping an eye on it for any type of development. Really has no shot for development here, but as this little swirl moves up into Georgia and interacts with this little disturbance here heading towards the Tennessee River Valley, it has the potential of either producing an extratropical or subtropical low pressure system around the North Carolina coast, which will have an impact on us on Friday into Saturday. I don't think this is going to be tropical, primarily because the majority of the lifespan of this low pressure system is going to be over land, and also it's going to be under an upper level low. So it sounds like to me that it would be a scenario with it being a subtropical low pressure system rather than a tropical. But we'll keep an eye on it and we'll see how everything develops. So over the next 90 hours, as you can see, our 500 millibar heights will be rising steadily. There's a short wave that's supposed to be moving through around midnight tonight that has the potential to produce some additional showers and thunderstorms. I'm not trusting it. If you go just by the European guidance, you'll see it's about 60% chance. I knocked it down to 40% chance of showers and thunderstorms tonight, mostly in the late evening to around midnight, and then it collapses thereafter. So we'll see whether or not that forms. HRR guidance and NAM guidance is a big no, but the European is really advertising it constantly. Otherwise, through Thursday, we see the 500 millibar heights rise in the polar jet stream. There is our disturbance in the subtropical jet stream with the little tropical disturbance under it, which could form a subtropical low pressure system as we move into Thursday. And then Friday, you could see how clearly we're under an upper level low here, but you have a lot of tropical moisture and a lot of mischief. And this little ridge axis here will funnel in plenty of moisture into the coastal plain. So high and dry over New England, pretty much northeastern Connecticut, but then as you head down towards Long Island, Hudson River Valley, New Jersey, it's going to get rather wet. And there's potential here for some very heavy rainfall. So we're going to have to watch how this all evolves. And the latest guidance here forms a nice little pocket of cold air aloft with a lot of tropical moisture underneath it, which could lead to some interesting interactions. We'll have to keep an eye on it. 700 millibars basically supports the idea of scattered broken cloud cover each afternoon with some of these showers and thunderstorms. When you see this type of hue showing up on your model guidance here at 700 millibars relative humidity, it basically advertises scattered broken cloud cover. And then we'll have to watch out for individual thunderstorms. Meanwhile, as you can see, the precipitable water values just constantly rise through the entire forecast period, putting us anywhere between 1 to 2 inches in precipitable water in the atmosphere. You add some lifting, and you can easily push over 2 inches, which means your rainfall rates could push over 1 inch per hour in a few isolated thunderstorms. 850 millibars, we continue on with that clash between a more maritime air mass out here, your tropical air mass out here, and we're in between with about 10 to 15 degree thermal gradient at the surface, ranging anywhere from the upper 70s to mid 90s or mid 70s to lower 90s, depending on the amount of convection that develops on any given day. But you can see what is setting up here, just a very, very muggy type air mass. That's a good tropical and muggy. That's a good theme right there. Taking a look at the latest HRR guidance again for this afternoon. Watch out for showers and thunderstorms. Look like a focus once again around the Delaware River Valley, central Jersey, southern Jersey. I wouldn't rule out New York City and Long Island though. Just be on guard. One little pesky little boundary or outflow boundary could easily set up that potential. Here is what the European guidance is showing. This would suggest like 60 to 80% chance of rainfall. I suspect convective feedback here, so I knocked it down to 40%. We'll see what develops this evening in terms of boundaries to ignite that. But I do like the rest of the forecast with showers and thunderstorms flaring up each afternoon, going all the way on through Thursday, interacting with these frontal boundaries and just hanging around. So plenty of moisture, plenty of activity, and then there is our pesky low pressure system down towards North Carolina. The idea here from the NHC is that, hey, if this gets over the coastal waters of North Carolina, it could pick up more tropical characteristics. It could, but it'd still be a subtropical storm. And then we'll see what happens as it heads up towards the region Friday night into Saturday, leading to the potential for some very heavy rainfall. And the active pattern continues. That is your premium video forecast discussion for today. Of course, I'm your meteorologist, Stephen D. Martino, and as always, stay safe out there.